I want to say a little bit about speech and language disruptions, but I want you to realize that it's relatively minimal here. And I want you to realize that because some of you may in fact be interested in going to school for speech pathology. This is a pretty common thing for psych majors after they graduate to do something like that. I won't say all that much about speech pathology here, but more so just about two major language disruptions that are interesting in terms of what they convey about how language is created in the brain. So speech pathology has to do with, little kids learning to say their S's in the right way and so forth. There's lots of speech therapists that work with kids in schools with IEPs and so forth, individualized education plans and so forth. And it's a large field where there's actually a lot of employment, and it's typically of interest to people with a psychology degree. Right here now, though, I'm just going to limit it to actual particular language disruptions, such as you see here, where a patient got damage to a particular part of the brain. And in this case, that part is called Broca's area. So the Greek word for language disruption is aphasia. Aphasia is a word for speech. So aphasia means without speech. Two different aphasias are fairly common after people have had either brain injury or a stroke. One of them is called Broca's or non-fluent aphasia and was discovered by a French doctor by the name of Paul Broca. And what happens in that case is that there's a disruption at the syntactic level of representation. And as a result of that, patients with this damage have a very hard time producing grammatically correct sentences. So even if they're trying to produce sentences, they just can't. And I'm going to post a video so that you can see what this non-fluent aphasia looks like. Another form of aphasia was discovered by a doctor called Carl Wernicke, and this is called Wernicke's or fluent aphasia. And what's interesting in this case is that there's no problem at the level of grammar, but at the level of filling in meaningful words and phonemes, everything goes south pretty quickly. So someone with Wernicke's aphasia can actually talk a mile a minute, grammatically correct sentences, but the sentences just don't make any sense in terms of their actual content. People with Broca's aphasia will use words that make sense given what they're trying to talk about, but they can't produce them in a grammatically fluent way, and that is why it's called non-fluent aphasia. So I'll post a video that you can see both of those patients, and you can see how severely affected they are and how different these two types of aphasias are. Now, if you look in the brain, it is the case here that we're dealing with a double dissociation. So Broca's area is more towards the front, located right here, and then Wernicke's area is a little more towards the back. And again, damage here leads to non-fluent speech. Damage here leads to, in some ways, grammatically correct, but nonsensical speech.